Eric from Ember. You're watching Aftershocks TV.
Great. All right, Aftershocks TV, Matt and Tom, we're back with everybody here for another episode this week. Tom, what's happening, man? Hope you had a splendid week as we get ready to do another episode here on Friday, man, which I always like doing these Friday nights because, you know, we're always in a good mood. Weekend starts and, you know, it's a good time, I think, for us to do it, man. How you doing?
Yeah, good, man. It was, a good week. We had a great interview last week with Eric Morgan. There's a slip of the tongue. Leave that in, man.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, leave it in. But, with Eric last week, so that was a great conversation. I text him since and say, listen, thanks for coming on. The video was posted, and he was really, really thrilled to be on. So had a good week, and Richie was in the wings from Focus on Metal there on your screen. I want Richie to talk about your podcast, Richie, too. It's important. And, just having some look at the Irish tonight. So we're going to
Yeah, I know. We got to introduce them right here, Tom. You know, you got to get the right introduction.
Well, okay. So here's my buddy at the bottom of your screen, Mr. Richie Waddell. We're both from the same town of Waterford, Ireland. We grew up together. We were buddies. And coincidentally, we both ended up moving to the US. Richie was here, I think, 3-4 years prior to me, living in the greater Boston area, and I live in Charlotte right now. So, and of course, co-host to one of my favorites, Focus on Metal podcast, which is just a phenomenal piece of work, Rich. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. It just is.
Yes, you are.
No, it's a good body of work. You and Scott do a great job, and I'm a subscriber. I don't miss it. I'm up to speed. I saw you posted one, I think this week or a few days ago, so I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that. So, Richie, over to you, my friend.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Yeah, I like the old discussion. We're doing more discussions on Focus on Metal now. Partly, that's the way I want the show to go. I don't really want to do interviews every week anymore, because I've interviewed a lot of the people I want to interview.
Right,
and the way life goes, sometimes the discussions are easier to schedule, and because you're not setting blocks of time to interview all these musicians. You can do the discussions whenever you want, and we're trying to do the show every week, but sometimes we go a week or two without doing a new show, and I just like the free form discussions more. I've done the interviews for years, and it's kind of like, I'm gonna kind of swing it the other way a little bit more. So
but I think Richie too, though, is that like discussion pieces, like we're going to touch on a few nice topics tonight. Like they're endless. Like you can pick any topic and get an hour out of it. As long as you have, what you're talking about, you can add in some substance and background to it. And I think, Matt and I, and obviously Richie, we've been chatting for about a week, and I think we've got 3 good topics tonight. So hopefully, we can get stuck into it.
Yeah. Forward to it.
Absolutely. And this is the week of St. Patrick's Day when this comes out. We didn't do this on purpose. This was not planned to have the Irish guys here for St. Patrick's Day, but just happened to work out that, which is great. But let's get into our first discussion. Tom, you hit me up earlier in the week, and as you mentioned, on this past Sunday, March the 3rd, was marked the 38th anniversary of the official release date for arguably what many consider the best, not just thrash metal album of all time, but metal album in general of all time. That's, of course, Metallica's Master of Puppets. Obviously, Master of Puppets was that album that obviously took Metallica, out of the underground and brought them pretty much into the mainstream. It went platinum in, I believe, 9 different countries. It was their 3rd record, obviously. One thing I was interested in, I don't know if you guys, I'm going to ask you guys if you knew this. There was actually, I guess, originally there was talks for Geddy Lee to produce that record. Did you guys know that? I had no idea until I was.
I did know that. I did. Really? They even had a discussion about it. I think he approached him, and the only reason it didn't happen is because of touring schedules. So just one of those situations that would have been the oddest pairing ever. I mean, because Metallica in 1986 were full-on trash band. Rush in 1986 were sounding like the Police. So, what would that sounded like? You know what I mean? So, one of those things that was never to be, and probably better that it wasn't, to be honest with you. I'm a big fan of both bands, but I don't know if Geddy Lee would have been the right man for that.
Metallica at that time, it was no secret that and it really came out with Bob Rock for the Black Album. They didn't like anyone messing with their songs.
Yeah.
So I wonder what it would have felt with Geddy Lee coming in saying, "Can you change the arrangement on this or change your vocals on that?" Because you're looking at a band that, well, Metallica, early 20s at the time. Geddy was probably in his 30s, a bit more wiser and, you know, around the block a bit more touring wise and all that. And you had this young upstart band that didn't really sound a lot like Rush. I don't think it worked.
No, it wouldn't. And then you would have had Metallica then probably, you know, rolling into the studio at 2:00 in the afternoon with hangovers and shit like that.
Yeah,
so,
right?
you know, so I can't imagine that dynamic. You know, Giddy is there since 7:00 waiting for him to turn up, you know, so that would have been a freaking disaster.
Yeah.
No, you're right, Rich. Like you said, they didn't want anyone messing with their stuff. I mean, which is why I think, you know, and we talked, me and Tom and Chris were talking about this a little bit on the, we did our stuff last week about producers. You know, they had Fleming, Rasmussen, who was, you know, virtually a guy who really hasn't done it much since then, you know, and you're right. But even Bob Rock, I mean, he was kind of new at the time. I know he did the Motley Crue. He did the, you know, Dr. Feelgood album, but that was really it for him. So yeah, you're right. I think they really just wanted, they didn't want the big producer or the big musician to come in and like you said, sort of mess with their things. The only reason why I could think of that they maybe would want someone like Geddy Lee to come in is just because there is
the brand, maybe. Well, I don't know.
It could be, but it's also, I think also that, you know, Master of Puppets has got, there are a lot of progressive moments, you know, within the album. So maybe there was something with, they wanted to just, you know, do some more of that or whatever it may be. But, you know, it is interesting though, the fact that they were looking at him, I think kind of shocked me a little bit. I wouldn't think that would be someone for that kind of music, you know? Yeah.
Folklore now. It's like one of those what ifs, you know?
Yeah. But I think what's interesting too about Master of Puppets is the impact, you know, that it had, you know, in the mid 80s without any help from MTV. I mean, there was no videos done for the album. Instead, I know they did a tour with Ozzy. And I think that's what really kind of catapulted them. But it's amazing that they did that well at that point in time with no MTV exposure, which is pretty much unheard of. I mean, even, you know, all those classic bands from the 70s were, like you said, the Rushes were changing their sound, changing the way they looked and their style for MTV. And he was, you know, Master of Puppets and Metallica just dominating without any airplay whatsoever. And I mean, even Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, everybody was doing videos, but they didn't do it, which is very interesting.
And it was in the middle, like 86 was pretty much like full on MTV, glass hair, you know, Ron Nevison type production. You know, that was really that's what was selling. Slippery When Wet came out that year. Peace Cells, I think, was 86. Among the Living was 87. Rain and Blood. I mean, Jesus. I mean, it was just like, it was one of those years that just came and went. But do you, Matt, and I'll just go around the circle, but do you remember what the first time you heard Master of Puppets, or when you remember listening to it for the first time and going, what am I listening to here?
I really do. I remember, what was interesting, I had a friend on my block and he had just signed up to some sort of cassette, you know, club thing. I think every month they would send like, you know, I think 3 to 5 cassettes, and it was always usually metal. It was like a rock, you know, hard rock metal type of, like one of those club things they had, like Columbia House with the records, you know, they had a whole bunch of them here in the States. And I remember he had the first tapes he got, it was 3 of them. It was Master of Puppets, it was Dawkins, Tooth and Nail, and Raven Stay Hard. And I remember, hearing Master of Puppets being like, wow, this is really different and great. I mean, I loved it so much where then, I went out, I remember, to the record store, probably, you know, a week or so later, I had some money. This was 86. So I was about like 10 years old. And I had some money. I remember I went to the store, but they didn't have Master of Puppets. They only had Kill 'Em All. So I remember I bought Kill 'Em All just because I wanted to have something by Metallica. And I remember I took it home, and I remember I had, you know, this old, I was given to me by my uncle. It was one of those things where it was just sort of like a big chest, like almost just a cabinet. And you open it up, and it had a vinyl player on it. It had an 8-track. It had a radio and a cassette player, all, you know, in one. And I remember I hadn't used a cassette player yet because I didn't really have many cassettes at that point. I was still buying vinyl as a kid, and I think that might have been my first or second cassette to Kill 'Em All. And I remember I put it, you know, in the player. And hit the lights, came on. I'm like, God, this is great. I went to the bathroom, it was right next to my room, and I was taking a piss, and I heard it stop. But I'm like, what the fuck is that? And I came out, and the tape got fucking chewed. You know, first time I played it, shoe destroyed. And so I remember I was like, shit, I had to get it with my dad. I'll fix it. And yeah, he fixed it like 2 or 3 years later when, you know,
yeah,
I mean, no,
probably with the pen, you know.
Exactly. All the exactly. Yep. And yeah, but I remember obviously, yeah, Smash Up Puppets. When I first heard it, I totally remember it, and I remember instantly I wanted to go out and buy it like instantly. So yeah, obviously, and I was like I said, I was 10 years old, so I was still a young little pup listening to a lot of hair metal stuff.
What about you, Richie? What was your first time?
I didn't have it. I didn't get it when it first came out. I think I got it in early '87. Because I was getting into metal with you and a couple of mutual friends, and I don't know, one of you guys gave me Master of Puppets because I'd heard a lot about it, and I was big into Maiden at the time. I thought it was Maiden on steroids. Yeah, I just couldn't believe it. It wasn't immediate for me either. Like some of those seminal thrash albums that came out in '86, Master of Puppets, Rain in Blood, and especially Peace Sells. When I heard Peace Sells the first time, I was like, what the fuck is this? Because it was so intricate and it was all over the map. And if you listen to Iron Maiden, it's very like structured verse, chorus, verse, chorus, guitar solos and out. And then you listen to something like Metallica or even Slayer or Megadeth. There's like 50 riffs in a song and 4 time changes. You're 16 years old. It's like, I don't think I'm ever going to get into this, but it didn't take me long to get into all of it. Yeah. But Master of Puppets, was it immediate? Definitely not. There were certain songs that stood out to me. I always have a soft spot for Disposable Heroes.
Oh, yeah.
I just think that's a fantastic song. And when people talk about that record, they always talk about the title track, or maybe Orion gets talked about a lot in Battery. Things like Disposable Heroes and Leper Messiah, they don't really get talked about as much as they should.
I agree. My favorite 2 songs on the record right there.
Yeah. Like all 8 songs are fantastic, but there's some that just, I think, get overlooked a little bit that I love.
I can remember the first time I heard it was, Richie, do you remember the Friday Rock Show?
Tommy Vance?
Yeah, Tommy Vance. Yeah, in listen to it in England. In Ireland, it used to be on like at maybe 10 o'clock on a Friday night, or it was kind of late at night, whatever. And I used to have this really shit stereo. It used to be on medium waves. It used to come and go, like the static would come in and then it'd go again. Yeah. And I had bought Ride the Lightning in '84, so I was well aware of the band, and I was, buying Kerrang weekly. So it wasn't my first time hearing Metallica, so I knew damn well, Fight Fire with Fire, so on and so forth. So I knew about the band, and I was buying Kerrang, so I knew Master of Puppets was on their way, and I was excited by it. And I think I obviously bought Kill 'Em All since then before it came out. But when I heard it on a shitty stereo, like with my ear literally in the corner trying to make it out because the sound was so bad, I was the opposite to you, Richie. I just heard it and I said, fuck me, there's something going on here. And I was actually intrigued by it because I couldn't hear it properly. I said, I know there's more to this. And then I bought the album like next week or whenever it came out, I can't remember. So for me it was immediate. And I remember buying the original. And then I think a couple of years later, they brought out the double vinyl. Remember that, Richie? They brought out the gatefold.
Yeah.
And I gave away my original Master Puppets to a mutual friend of ours. No. Yeah, because I don't need that one because I got the new one. Yeah. I know somebody has my original Master Puppets from '86. So I would have been, I would have been 15, and I was well into my, I was a metalhead. Full and proper in 1986, so I loved it. The minute I heard it, I said, "Yeah, I'm in."
Yeah, Matt. The one thing you have to remember about Master of Puppets for me and Tommy, they weren't on Elektra. They were on Music for Nations.
They were. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, in Europe. Okay,
but the copy I have, and I actually still have it. It came over with me when I moved. Is the Music for Nations label? So I've got Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets on Music for Nations. They were on an indie. They weren't on Elektra until
that's right.
I think Justice.
So in Europe they weren't on Elektra until then. Okay, right. Interesting. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's a good.
So now that makes you feel really bad because that's the one I gave away. Fantastic.
I know. Right?
Fuck.
Tommy, you bought the gatefold one in shades, didn't you, in London?
I did. I bought it. Yeah, we used to. Yeah, Kerrang magazine had a weekly. Well, Krang was weekly, and they had this UK store called Shades, and they had all the shit that you just could. Like, we were from I don't say small town. I don't mean to be derogatory. It was a kind of a small town in the scheme of things, but you just couldn't get the shit. We had to get it on order. So I used to buy the stuff from England and send over your cashier's check or whatever it was, and then you'd get the album like 6 weeks later or something, And we bought a shit ton of that, and Master with the Gateful was one of them. Yeah, I remember. But like for me, I mean, we're probably just we segue into the album itself now. I keep going, I guess. But for me, it's 54 minutes and 52 seconds of just 54 minutes 52 seconds of just sheer brilliance. For me, I think it's arguably the greatest, like you said at the top of the segment, Matt. Probably the greatest metal album ever recorded. And when you say that, that's big. And you against Number of the Beast or Rain and Blood or whomever, it doesn't matter. Pick your album, pick your band. But when you think, like you said, Richie, how young that band was. To record an album 38 years later that sold 9 million copies worldwide, 6 million in the US, and we're having a whole discussion on it. And even the album cover today, you just see it on t-shirts ad nauseum. You don't even know what it is. The whole album is just so iconic. It's I just can't imagine not having it. And like probably Master of Puppets and AC/DC Back in Black are probably the two albums if I had to take two out, not saying they're both of my favorite bands, they're actually not, but if I had to take two albums to a desert island, they're probably it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I think it's flawless.
Yeah. I think what was really great about it is it's just how I think it redefined really just metal at the time, especially thrash, because of its technical skill. It wasn't just based off of speed. I think up until then, it was really just about how fast, everyone could play. It was more about speed, with Slayer and everything. This was so much more. I mean, like you said, with Orion, and I mean, just the technical skill was, I think, what really just put that record over the top. And like I said, it just, there was no other album, especially within thrash, that sounded anything like it with the technical skill, and I think that's what just makes it stand out over all those great, thrash metal records, whether it's, like you said, Rain and Blood or whatever. It's right there. Like you said, it's got to be obviously a top three of, like I said, everyone has their own preferences, but for me, definitely thrash metal album. That was the album that got me into thrash, no doubt.
And even how many songs, I should say, are they still playing regularly live right now? 5 or 6, arguably, over the years. Not just on this tour, but I'm just saying over the years, they're probably playing half the album still. Something that's 38 years old. I look at all the releases they've had since then, and they still keep going back to Leper and obviously Master and Battery and whatever. So, it's like Kiss's first album. It's arguably their best because they play 5 songs on every tour since 1974. Same thing with Puppets.
Yeah, and I think it's either, I don't know if it's either Disposable Heroes or Leper Messiah. I think it's they didn't play that song for like ever live. I remember because I wanted to see it so bad, and like they just don't do it. And I think they recently did it within the last like 10 years or something.
Oh, wow.
Maybe like about 10 years ago, they started playing it. I forget which exact song. I think it might be, I don't know if it was Leper, either one, because like I said, those are my two favorite songs. But like I said, Damage Incorporated, that was really, I remember, such a different song that I ever heard before too, because of sort of the rhythm of it, and just like you said, sort of the technicality of it was just so, it was fast but so technical. It was just so like, how do they do that? Like they're
so freaking young. Like they were
kiddos.
Arguably they've gotten worse over the years. Except Hetfield maybe, but you'd have to argue that they've decreased in their abilities. Obviously, Lars is not a great drummer. Kirk was never a great guitar player. Obviously, Robert wasn't in play. And I'm guessing James is a better singer and arguably a better player, but that it's so arguably they got worse since 1986 if you look at it that way. But it's not that they didn't. They did release a couple of howlers, obviously, Lulu, but that album is for me is just it's just unmatched.
Well, last year I interviewed Eric Biederman, who's the the band Blind Illusion at all. They were a band from up here that was they had like Les Claypool was in the band, and they were a thrash band. Kirk Hammett was the one that really got them signed. They were on Music for Nations, and he got them the deal. I remember because he was like managing them or something. He was friends with them, and I did it. And I beat them as kind of. I mean, they were a good band, Blind Illusion. They put out a great record last year, freaking awesome thrash metal record. But they were a little bit really, really progressive and more, experimental, a little bit thrash. Kind of strange band, like a little weird, but really good. But anyway, he was telling me. I mean, Eric's kind of a guy who's been sort of. I don't want to say shunned, but some people I think in the scene, in the thrash metal scene, aren't like huge fans of him because he speaks his mind. And so last year I interviewed him. I didn't put it out in the interview because the guys asked me not to after he did it. But he knew Kirk Hammett really well. He grew up with him. He knew his family really well. And he was saying how that Kirk Hammett he claims that he, was basically called him after Master of Puppets and said, I got nothing left. That everything he had done up until that point, he used all on Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets. And he actually supposedly, like I said, this is just what he said, but I'm not. But he said that, he was like all his best stuff, supposedly he had done prepped up to a Master of Puppets. And then he was sort of like, he didn't know what else to do after that. Like I said, just something to throw out there. I'm not saying it's true or not. But
Richie, am I right in saying that you think Justice is a better album? It's your favorite?
Well, you have to look at it from my perspective. When you get into a band, and the album is kind of old, and you really get into them, it's the one after that, the new one, that always has an emotional attachment to you. And Justice had that attachment to me because I was catching up with Metallica when all you guys were in on them before me. And then I could go and say, oh, new Metallica or new Iron Maiden or new Judas Priest. It's just a time frame. I think when you get into metal, there's certain albums that come out that speak to you more. Like
100%.
One of Scorpion Savage Amusement, right? And everyone says, oh, their best album is Blackout, and it might be their best album, or Animal Magnetism, or Love Drive. But the one that my favorite Scorpions album is Savage Amusement because that's when their music hit me when I was that age. I really heard
Great album. That's a fantastic album. Yeah, production on it is amazing. Still holds up too.
Yeah, but you're talking there about Master of Puppets. On Focus on Metal for episode 300 and 301, we interviewed Fleming Rasmussen.
Okay,
I remember that.
And we interviewed Andy Galian, the drummer in Death Angel. The reason I wanted to get Andy on was, he was a few years younger, of course, than any of the rest of them, and he could tell me about the influence that album had on all the other bands in the Bay Area. And he told me that album really raised all the boats. That they knew the band had it in them, but when that album came out, a lot of the other bands went, holy shit, I can't believe it is that good.
Yeah.
Like they knew they were going to be big, and eventually a couple of years later with the Black Album and Justice, they really broke. But Andy was telling me that album is their best. And I think a lot of the musicians in that area as well, and a lot of the thrash musicians, even with the albums that came after, they all still cite Master as their best album.
I think it's like a moment in rock or metal. It's like when Eddie Van Halen did what he did in 77, 78. All the guitar players went, oh, fuck, like, oh my God, what's happening here?
Well, yeah.
Same with Hendrix. I remember reading stories of Eric Clapton going to see Hendrix come, that's it. I'm done. I don't know what to do. I can't compete with this. So same thing with Metallica, to Richie's point, is exactly the same thing. Their impact was so immediate and so fantastic. Everybody else said, there was probably bands may have even had albums in the can and go, scrap that, we got to write another one, guys, because we got to compete with this shit. You know what I mean? I think it was that impactful, it was that good and that immediate to so many people, whether it was the first week or maybe 6 months later. And I'm glad that a lot of albums get lost in time. Like, you take a movie like The Shawshank Redemption as an example. That movie was a complete flop when it came out, and it took 10 years for people to realize how good it was. Metallica was immediate. Like, it was like, to your point at the top of the hour, it just came out and then boom, they were on a tour with Ozzy for 5 months. So they came in like a whirlwind, and like we're still talking about it, like, almost 4 decades later,
Yeah. Well, Andy Gallion, he's in the band Blind Illusion, by the way. But yeah, I think there's one. I'll say I think the reason why it's so good, but also Master of Puppets, is one person's name, Cliff Burton. And that's the thing. No one was ever going to get a Cliff Burton in their band playing bass, and that's I think, if you look at just Ride Lightning and Master of Puppets, that's why those albums are just so amazing and iconic, is because you've just pretty much, I'd have to say he's the best metal bassist, arguably, I know, but in terms of like the 80s and, real metal and thrash, I mean, there's no one that can compare to,
But I think it was his influence as well, like his musical influences, like, James and Lars, they were like just like Saxon and Diamond Head and Budgie. They were metalheads, and then he was bringing Cliff was bringing in all these other influences, and he was the one that said, "Let's get out of LA, let's move to San Francisco." So that would have changed their sound a little bit more harder and gritty and shit like that. So yeah, I'm glad I totally forgot about that. I think Cliff's importance of this album. And hence Metallica's career is just, insurmountable. What he did for that band, and probably an unsung hero of because a lot of Metallica fans got into Metallica in '91, and then they went back on it and listened to Master and love Master, but they don't really get what he did, because I was reading about. I remember reading about when he died, like when that accident in Europe on tour. We were reading, crying, going, "Holy shit balls! Like, what's happening?" So his impact was unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
I think what you have to remember as well about the big thrash bands back then, they all sounded similar, but they all had their own unique style. And I think what eventually happened when the Black Album came out was some of those bands tried to chase that sound and slow down their music and write 4 or 5 minute songs. But in '86, when you look at Slayer, Megadeth, and then Anthrax in '87, and even Exodus and Overkill and Testament, were they all thrash bands? Yes. Did they all sound the same? I would argue no.
Yeah, no, you're right. They didn't sound the same. It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just good that we can still have this conversation and put it up there. With, like I said, I mean, it's almost unbelievable that a band that young, I don't know, 23, 24, whatever they are, I don't know, but can create that masterpiece. Like you'd often hear musicians or interviewers asking musicians, like, did you know when you were writing the song that it was going to be, whatever, as big as it was, or a hit song? And I don't know what the answer to that is. I can't remember any Metallica players talking about it, but I don't know. I'm guessing they probably didn't. They were just goofballs drinking beer in the garage and talking, writing songs.
I did read
Fleming Rasmussen that question.
Oh, what did he say?
He said he knew it was good, but there's no way he knew it would be what it came
that
out
good,
to
huh?
be at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, the guys even said, I read something too, where in an interview they said that they had no idea. They just thought they were writing another record. There was no, it wasn't like, oh, we got this really special thing. It was just like, it's just another record they wrote. They said in the Metallica house here in El Cerrito, and that was it. It just took on a life of its own, pretty much. I guess, And like you
and
said,
it probably still sells, arguably, like 100,000, 200,000 copies a year, streaming, all that kind of shit. So new generations are going to see Metallica now play to 80,000 people a night and they're going back and picking up albums that are streaming or whatever they're doing. So they're still making money from it all these years later.
Absolutely. One of the best concert experiences I ever had, and I don't know whether you were at this show, Tommy. Did Metallica play Download? It must have been about 10 or 15 years ago now. And they played a show in Dublin around that time, and they played the whole of Master of Puppets.
Yeah, I was there.
From start to finish.
Wow, nice.
And it was incredible.
Yeah, I remember
Absolutely incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I know it's too bad. It's like, there's so many bands that, right, especially now, as they gotten a little older, they do those album tours, playing the albums start, straight to finish. Unfortunately, Metallica, they just don't need to do that. A lot of bands need to do it because they know, like, all right, this will be a seller and people will come in. But Metallica obviously doesn't need to do that. But that's a special thing that you get to see one show like that. I mean, that's special.
And I guess and that's all I know, Matt, that like I can bring a different flavor to the shows, and Richie, bringing in what we used to do, and the Doningtons we went to, because a lot of bands went to Europe and played different sets because the European audience were a little bit harder, less glossy, and likewise a lot of American, like English bands like Saxon as an example, when they tried to break the US, they went lighter. They kind of catered to the audience, and I guess maybe that was more something that they did for the European fans, and I don't know if they did it over here. Maybe they did. I have no idea. But fuck it, we got to see it, Richie. So fuck Matt, you know.
Fuck me. There you go. Oh, funny, man. All right. You got anything else? You got? I think we can move on.
Yeah.
That was a good way to finish it. Good job, Tom.
Here, one quick question.
Yeah.
When is the last time you listened to that album from start to finish?
Very good question. You know, from start to finish, it's probably got to be a handful of years ago. Start to finish. I mean, I listened to a song or two here and there, a couple of songs, but you're right. Start to finish.
I would say within a year, maybe within a year ago, could be longer. But I listen to it regularly. Like I could be driving along. Oh, I'm going to listen to that, and I'd say, "Fucking Puppets, put it on," whatever. So yeah. But what about you, Rich?
Well, it's probably been about a year.
Okay.
It's all the songs are always on the radio. Commercial radio now playing Master of Puppets because it was a Stranger Things that was in the show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes, it was.
Yes,
that
gave him even more exposure.
Yeah.
The younger.
No, you're right. It did. My niece, she's like 13 now. She heard it about 2 years ago. That's when she started getting into metal. Really, was because of that through Stranger Things. That was the first. Now she's on like Slipknot and stuff. But at the time, that was like the first. And I'm like, where'd you hear that? I just start listening to this, and she's like, "Oh, Stranger Things." So yeah, right there it is. I guess a good thing about Stranger Things or TV shows. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion about that. But that was something back in the 80s here that there was a show, Miami Vice, that every week they'd play a new song on Friday. Everyone was looking forward to who it would be. There was always a rock tune. It was usually like, Tommy Shaw or somebody would always have a song on there. That was a big thing on TV back then, was what rock or metal song are they going to play on the show and stuff. So
I wonder, Matt, if Richie, if newer rock and metal fans who were into, Avenged Sevenfold, Disturbed or whatever, if a 20-year-old got into metal in say the last 5 or 6 years, do they now see Metallica's Dinosaurs the way 80s bands saw Led Zeppelin or Deep Purple as dinosaurs? I don't know the answer because I don't have any 25-year-old rock and metal fans,
I would just guess no, just because everything is really about the nostalgic and older bands. I mean, you're not really, there's not this big push of newer bands. There's no MTV pushing it with the style and the fashion, and the visuals. So I think really, I mean, just from interviewing some younger bands, I mean, sure, they're influenced by a lot of bands in their scene and, in their age and stuff, but it really is usually the classic bands, I think, a lot of them. So, yeah, something like Metallica is never gonna, because they're still all over the place, they're still, I mean, playing, the Grammys or playing whatever. And so they're still everywhere. So, so I think, they're still pretty much the de facto, band for a lot of young kids. And like I said, especially if their parents listen to them. Yeah.
And they're coming back out for the second leg or third leg of the US tour soon, I believe. I don't know when that is, but they're not playing Charlotte, them mofos. So I'm not going to get to see them.
Yeah.
Not playing here. No.
Yeah, Metallica, they're not just a big metal band. They're just one of the biggest bands in the world in music.
Yeah.
They transcended metal years ago.
They
did.
Yeah.
They did.
They did. They took it global. They made it global. They really did.
Like their average, their average attendance on the last tour was like 68,000 people or something. I mean, that's huge.
Crazy.
That's U2 numbers. Like seriously, that's how big huge. They are.
Yeah, massive.
And God bless them. Like I mean, it's our genre, it's what we love. So if we got one of our bands, we call rock and metal fans are very territorial. So it's one of our bands or one of their biggest bands. So I'll take it all day.
Yeah, we were one of those first bands to go to Indonesia or whatever, just different parts of the world that most bands wouldn't even fathom of going, think of going to. And I think that's obviously, like you said, that's just what made them. I mean, every country you go to pretty much, it's they're kind of like the way Bon Jovi used to be. Every country knows who they are, and you can't really say that about, a lot of rock or metal bands at all, in general. So, yeah.
No, yeah, good point.